I'm John Batchelor. Malcolm Hoenlein of the Conference of Presidents is with me, and we're joined, very pleased to welcome to the show, the Executive Director of UN Watch, which is an NGO based in Geneva, Switzerland, Hillel Neuer. Hillel, a very good evening to you. We're looking to an event that we need to explain it repeatedly, which is Durban III, scheduled for September of 2011. What is Durban III coming to New York, and why do we need to worry about it?
Well, it's a summit organized by the UN for world leaders when they'll be gathering in New York in the annual high-level segment that the UN has each year when New York gets shut down for all these world leaders, President Obama, Ahmadinejad, you name it, coming in to give their speeches. And countries that want to put the West, America, and Israel on the firing line have decided to organize a summit on racism, at least supposedly on racism, supposedly to combat racism, and it's a commemoration of a conference that happened 10 years ago in South Africa, in the city of Durban, South Africa, which was the first most well-known world conference on racism. And in fact, in that 2001 conference, it turned into what the late Tom Lantos, who was Mr. Human Rights of Congress, called the worst display of anti-Semitism he had ever seen since the Nazi period. The protocols of the Elders of Zion and other Nazi-like caricatures were distributed widely. Thousands marched in the streets calling Zionism, racism, and other epithets were hurled. So it was really a very ugly scene. So this was in 2001 in South Africa. And this summit coming for New York City, coming up in September 21st, will be a commemoration of that event. And that's why the United States government voted against the resolution just on the eve of Christmas, actually, on December 24th here in New York. And Ambassador Rice stated that the Durban process involved intolerance and anti-Semitism, and that is something that should not be commemorated. And I think that's what all of us feel, that this should not be commemorated here in New York, and especially only 10 days after the people of New York City and of the United States will be grieving the 10th anniversary of the terrorist attacks of September 11th, 2001. So this is really the wrong place, the wrong time, holding the wrong conference. And unfortunately, the UN did not listen. They did not listen to the Obama administration, which, of course, has tried very hard, in their view, to achieve a rapprochement between the United States and the United Nations. And instead, the UN has thumbed its nose at America, and we're facing this event, which is going to be a circus. We're going to have Ahmadinejad is going to be there, accusing America and Israel of being racist, and claiming that Iran doesn't commit any discrimination, when we know that the opposite is true. And many countries, like Gaddafi and the Cubans, will be attacking and demonizing America. And all of this is going to happen in New York just a few days after the commemoration of 9/11. So it's very sad, and it's something that everyone is going to be opposing here in New York City.
Hillel, we should note that Canada led the charge again and took the moral stand of announcing it won't participate. Israel did the same, and we hope the United States will follow soon. Has there been a shift in the vote over the years? Are more countries coming to recognize how detrimental this is to the UN, to the principles of the UN, and who pays for this event?
I think so. You touched on an important point, Malcolm. You know, in 2001, it was the United States, it should be noted, under Secretary of State Colin Powell, an African-American, someone for whom the issue of discrimination was very real, and he said that what the UN was doing was an abomination, and he pulled out the American delegation from South Africa, and the other country was Israel. So it was only two countries that had the guts to object in that way and pull out. That was in 2001. In 2009, just really a year and a half ago in Geneva, Switzerland, across the street from my office, was Durban II. It was called the Durban Review Conference. And at that time, it wasn't two countries, but 10 countries pulled out. First, it was Canada, under the moral leadership of Prime Minister Stephen Harper, who's really been a beacon of light in standing up to hypocrisy at the United Nations and standing up on principle. And any group that cares about human rights and democracy ought to salute the path, the courageous path that he has led. And so Canada was first, then it was Israel, then it was Italy, then the United States, then Germany, Poland, Netherlands, the Czech Republic, Australia, New Zealand, all of them pulling out. And the United Nations Human Rights Chief, Navi Pillay, who was making very sinister analogies about Jewish groups that were fearful of anti-Semitism. She was expressing herself in a way that delegitimized them. She talked about these mysterious lobby groups that were casting aspersions on her conference. She said that when all these countries pulled out, each time they pulled out, it felt like a knife in her back, and that's not something that makes us happy. But it does show that the UN looks at country participation from countries that are democracies very seriously. And when 10 countries pull out, leading democracies, Germany, the United States, Canada, the UN gets the message. And so what we need to focus on now, in advance of September, is that the UN has to get the message that when Gaddafi and
are they getting the message in regard to the Human Rights Council as well? Now that this is the year for the review of the so-called restructured but clearly still corrupt Human Rights Council?
And we have 30 seconds, Hillel.
Yeah, well, the answer is no. It's the foxes guarding the chickens. We have members like Cuba. Libya was just elected 6 months ago, the regime of Colonel Gaddafi. Saudi Arabia, which treats women as second or 10th class citizens, they're all members. So it's the foxes guarding the chickens. It's the inmates running the asylum. And that's why the world's worst abusers continue to enjoy impunity at the United Nations Human Rights Council.
Hillel Neuer is the executive director of UN Watch, which is a NGO, a human rights NGO based in Geneva, Switzerland. Durban III is scheduled for September of this year. It is not too early to express your disdain for the United Nations for endorsing a circus. Malcolm Hoenlein of the Conference of Presidents, Major American Jewish Organizations. I'm John Batchelor.